The building on Lunar House Road does not look like a place where identity goes to get confused. It looks like every other mid-century government block in Croydon, wide, flat-faced, the color of old envelope paper. The kind of building that exists not to be noticed but to process, to receive, to sort, to file, and to move on to the next thing without sentiment or ceremony. Marcus Elroy had worked inside it for 22 years. He did not love the building. He did not hate it either. He had arrived at that particular neutrality that long-term civil servants develop the way other people develop hobbies, gradually, without intending to, until one day you look up and realize you have stopped expecting anything from a place except that it continue to exist. Marcus expected Lunar House to continue to exist. He expected the carpet in the East Corridor to remain the same municipal gray it had been since 2004. He expected the vending machine on the second floor to remain out of order on Tuesdays for reasons no one had ever investigated. And he expected the work to be what it had always been, steady, procedural, and largely invisible to anyone outside the division. He was a records auditor, grade 7, band C internal designation, Mr. 7. His job was to sit with files and make sure what was in them matched what was supposed to be in them. That was it. 22 years of that. He was, in the language of the division, a reconciliation officer, which meant that when the system said one thing and the paper said another, Marcus Elroy was the person who decided which version was correct and then made the necessary notation to bring both into alignment. He was, in a sense, a man whose entire professional life had been dedicated to making sure that records told the truth. He arrived on Monday morning of his final week, before the digital migration, carrying a paper cup of tea from the place 2 doors down that had been there since before he started and would almost certainly outlast him. His jacket was navy. His shoes were clean. His lanyard said Mr. 7 in the white box below his photograph. The photograph being the one taken in 2019, which he still did not feel entirely represented him, but which he had decided was not worth challenging. Delia was already at her desk. Delia Ose was the records supervisor. She had worked in the division for 14 years, which made her, in floor terms, relatively new, though she would have disputed that characterization with the calm certainty of someone who had been running the actual operations of the department since approximately her 3rd week. She was organized in a way that made Marcus feel disorganized by proximity, which he had come to accept as simply part of working near Delia. She did not say good morning the way most people said good morning. She said it the way someone confirms a booking, briefly, efficiently, with the implication that the matter is now settled and they can move on. Morning, she said without looking up. Morning, Marcus said, and went to his desk. His desk was by the window that overlooked the car park. He had been offered a different desk once, closer to the internal corridor with better light. He had declined. He liked the car park window, not because the car park was interesting, but because the view was honest. Nobody came to look at the car park. It wasn't pretending to be anything. He set down his tea and looked at what was waiting for him. There was a backlog. This was not unusual. The digital migration had been announced 6 months ago, and in the way of all large institutional transitions, it had produced exactly the kind of administrative paralysis it was designed to prevent. Files that should have been processed in February were still sitting in physical trays in May. Cases that should have been closed, cross-referenced, and fed into the new system were instead stacked in beige folders on the trolley beside the photocopier. The trolley that Preet had labeled, with characteristic optimism, Priority Digitation, and which had not moved perceptibly in 11 weeks. Marcus pulled the trolley toward him. There were 43 files. He knew this because he counted them before he began, the way he always counted before he began, the way his supervisor in 1999 had told him to count before beginning, and the habit had stayed. 43 files. 5 working days. roughly 8 to 9 files per day if he maintained pace and wasn't interrupted, which he would be, but you began from the ideal and worked toward the actual. That was the job. He opened the first file and started. By 10:30, he had cleared 6 files, logged them correctly, placed them in the outgoing tray, and was reaching for the 7th when the 8th file, which he had not yet touched, slid sideways off the stack and landed face up on his desk. He looked at it. It was thinner than the others, noticeably thinner. Where most files in a backlog of this age ran to 40 or 50 pages of accumulated documentation, correspondence, assessments, transfer records, notes from supervisors long since retired, this one appeared to contain perhaps 8 to 10 pages, possibly fewer. It was the kind of thinness that meant either a very short case history or a very incomplete one. And in Marcus's experience, incomplete files were more common than short ones and considerably more troubling to process. He looked at the designation on the tab. The designation read, Mr. 7/LCR88M. He looked at it for a moment, then he set the file aside and went back to the 7th. He told himself it was because he wanted to maintain sequential order. That was true. It was also true that something about the designation had produced in him a sensation he could not immediately name. Not alarm, exactly, and not recognition either, but something in the narrow space between those two things, the way you feel when someone mentions a place you've been to but can't quite locate on a map. He filed the 7th, logged it, placed it in the outgoing tray, and reached for the 8th. He picked up a different file instead. By Wednesday, Marcus had cleared 21 files. The thin one had moved 3 times. Once when Delia asked him to shift his stack so the afternoon trolley could get through. Once when Preet came to collect a batch of completed files, and Marcus covered the thin one with his notepad without quite deciding to do so. And once when Marcus himself moved it to the left side of his desk, then to the right, then back to the left. He had not opened it. This was unusual for him. Marcus was not by nature or by training a person who avoided files. Avoidance was the enemy of reconciliation. You could not make a record accurate by looking away from it. He knew this. He had said this, or versions of this, to every junior officer who had rotated through the division since 2008. You do not resolve a discrepancy by hopping, it resolves itself. You open the file. You read what it says. You compare it against what it should say. You make the notation. You move forward. He opened the file on Wednesday afternoon at 14:22, according to the clock on the wall behind Delia's desk, which ran 3 minutes fast, and which everyone in the office had silently agreed to treat as accurate because adjusting it required a stepladder and a specific screwdriver that facilities had not provided since 2017. The file contained 9 pages. The first page was a case registration form. Standard format, the version used between 1998 and 2006 before the layout was revised. The fields were filled in by hand, in blue ink, in the slightly compressed handwriting of someone who had learned to write quickly to keep up with the volume. Marcus read the name at the top of the registration form. He read it twice. Then he set the page down flat on his desk, aligned its edges with the edge of the desk the way he did when he needed a moment without it looking like he needed a moment, and looked out at the car park. A silver Vauxhall was revering badly into a space 2 rows back. It took 4 attempts. On the 5th attempt it got close enough and stopped. The driver did not get out immediately. They just sat there for a moment in the car between attempts and destination. Marcus understood that. He picked up the page again. The name at the top of the registration form was Marcus David Elray. Date of birth, 14 March 1980. National Insurance Suffix, CR88. Department of Registration, Home Office Records Division, Croydon. Internal designation assigned at onboarding, Mr. 7. He was holding his own file. Not a copy, not a reference. The original onboarding file, the one that should have been processed, cross-referenced, and either archived or destroyed according to the standard 7-year retention cycle, at least 3 times over the course of his career. The file that, by any standard reading of the retention policy, should not exist in a physical form in this building in this year in this backlog on this trolley. And yet, he turned to page 2. Page 2 was a department transfer record. It listed a transfer in 2009 from the East Wing, 3rd floor to the East Wing, 2nd floor. Marcus did not remember this transfer. He remembered a transfer in 2009, but he remembered it as moving from the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor upward, not downward. He was reasonably certain of this because the 3rd floor had a better photocopier and he had been pleased about the move. He checked page 3. Page 3 listed his job titles across the years. The titles were almost right. Almost. His 2013 designation was listed as Senior Processing Officer. Band B, he had been Senior Processing Officer. Band C, the difference between Band B and Band C in 2013 was a difference of roughly £4,000 annually. He had been Band C, he was certain of this because he had been told he was Band C and had found this mildly disappointing at the time. He sat with this for a while. He turned to the remaining pages slowly. The way you read something when you are not entirely sure you want to know what comes next, but you are more certain that not knowing is worse. Page 7 stopped him entirely. Page 7 was a status notation. Single line, dated 6 November 2014. It read subject deceased, record flagged for closure. Ref, admin error, do not action. Below it in different ink in handwriting Marcus did not recognize. Correction logged 9 November 2014. Status, active, error, clerical. 3 days. He had been officially dead in his own file for 3 days in November 2014, and no one had told him. He had been at work those 3 days. He remembered November 2014 because the office had done a birthday lunch for Delia on the 7th, and he had eaten a cheese sandwich and a piece of cake, and filled out 4 transfer assessments before the afternoon was done. He had been a productive corpse. He needed to print the retention policy. He needed to look at the exact language around file destruction timelines, because if this file should have been destroyed and wasn't, the question of why it hadn't been was a question he needed to be able to answer before he made any notation. That was the protocol. You established what should have happened before you documented what did happen. You did not make notation from surprise. You made notation from procedure. He went to the printer. The printer was a Ricoh MP 3055, leased by the department since 2018 and theoretically serviced quarterly, practically serviced whenever someone finally submitted the request form and facilities got around to it, which operated on a timeline that had never been satisfactorily explained to anyone on the floor. The printer had a small screen that displayed its status at all times. The status currently displayed was warming up. It had displayed WARMING up for 6 weeks. Marcus pressed the print button. The printer said warming up. Marcus pressed it again. The printer considered this. The screen flickered. It displayed briefly a different message, PROCSSING, and then returned to warming up with the quiet certainty of a machine that had made peace with its limitations. Marcus stood in front of it for a moment. He went back to his desk and wrote his notes by hand. He had a yellow legal pad that he used for preliminary notations before transferring to the official log, and he wrote on it now in his compressed, leftward-leaning handwriting. The handwriting he had developed in the first 2 years of the job and never changed, because there had never been a reason to change it. He noted the file number. He noted the 9 pages. He noted the discrepancies, the floor transfer direction, the band designation, the status notation of 6 November 2014. He wrote the word deceased, and then stared at it for long enough that the word began to look like it belonged to some other language. Delia walked past. Her footsteps were the measured, flat-soled kind that did not announce themselves dramatically. She came around the partition with a stack of outgoing files balanced in one arm and her coffee in the other hand, and she glanced at Marcus's desk. Not intrusively, just the peripheral sweep that supervisors develop, the constant low-level awareness of what's happening on the floor, and then she kept walking. She did not ask what he was working on. In 14 years of working near Delia, Marcus had come to understand that there were two versions of Delia not tasking. The first was the ordinary version, which was simply that she already knew or didn't need to know. The second was the version where she had noticed something that fell outside her immediate jurisdiction and was deciding, in real time, how to handle it. Marcus had seen the second version perhaps 4 times in 14 years. The way she'd not tasked just now felt like the second version. He said nothing. She said nothing. The printer said, warming up. He turned back to his notes and kept writing. By 5 o'clock, he had filled 6 pages of the legal pad. He folded them carefully and placed them inside his copy of the retention policy manual, which lived in the bottom drawer of his desk, which locked, and which he locked now with the small key on his lanyard, the one next to the building entry fob, the one he had never had cause to use before today. He took the thin file and placed it back on the trolley, third from the top, under a file marked SOMERSET Ref 2021D, which was thick enough to conceal it. He put on his jacket and went home. He did not sleep particularly well. Preet Bhandari had been in IT migration for 3 years and had the energy of someone who still found databases genuinely interesting, which Marcus had always found both admirable and slightly difficult to relate to. Preet was 29. He wore trainers to work under his office trousers, a combination that the dress code technically didn't permit, and that no one had ever challenged because Preet was the only person in the building who understood the new system well enough to keep it from catastrophically failing during the migration period, and challenging the trainers felt, in that context, like a poor strategic decision. Marcus found him on Thursday morning in the server room annex, which was a small room beside the fire exit that had been repurposed for the migration, and which smelled permanently of warm electronics and the particular variety of instant noodles that Preet ate at his desk at 11 o'clock every day without variation. "Preet," Marcus said. Preet looked up from 2 screens. "Mr. Elray, can I ask you to run something for me?" "Sure." Preet said this the way he said most things, without the slight wariness that most people develop around unusual requests, because Preet's baseline assumption was that all requests were data-adjacent and therefore interesting. "What are we looking at?" "A designation trace," Marcus said. "Mr. 7, suffix LCR88M. I want to see every system entry attached to that designation. All databases, historical and current." Preet's fingers moved. "That's an internal staff designation." "I know. Staff files are usually HR's." "I know," Marcus said. "I'm the designated reconciliation officer for the pre-migration backlog. The file has come up in the audit. I need the system record to cross-reference the paper." This was true. It was also, Marcus had decided somewhere around 3 in the morning, the version of true that he was going to work with until he understood what he was actually looking at. Preet nodded and typed. The trace took 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Marcus watched the screen without appearing to watch the screen, which was a skill he had developed over 22 years of sitting in rooms where things were being decided, and it was professionally important to seem present without seeming invested. The results loaded. Preet looked at them. Then he looked at Marcus. Then he looked back at the screen with the particular expression of someone who has found something they were not expecting and is calculating very quickly whether this is their problem. So Preet said. "Yes," Marcus said. "There are 2 date of birth entries against this designation." "I see that." 14 March 1980, Preet said, and 14 March 1981. "Yes." 1 year apart. "Yes." Same name, Preet said. Same NI suffix, 2 different addresses, one in Lewisham, one in Catford. Those are both. South London, yes. One is where I grew up. One is where I lived from 2003 to 2008. Preet was quiet for a moment. The system thinks you're 2 people. The system, Marcus said, appears to have never reconciled the initial onboarding entry with the updated address record from 2003, and instead created a parallel entry rather than overwriting the original. Which means for approximately 22 years, every time data has been entered against my designation, there has been a roughly arbitrary chance that it went a profile 1 or profile 2, depending on which system was running the input. Preet stared at the screen.